After a lot of experimenting and testing, we were actually able to figure out how the game calculates damage. And there's a lot of really juicy stuff in there, some of which makes a lot of sense, some of which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but knowing it will help you actually get a lot more out of your characters. First off, there's something I need to teach you, and it's called both base damage and bonus damage. So when you go to your character screen in a battle, so you're not on auto battle, it's your turn, you press this button down in the very bottom left, you then see the character overview, and then you see the attack right here. Now this is very important. The white attack on the left that it shows right here is base attack. And the attack on the right, that is attack bonus that comes from something like attack percentage. So any attack percentage effects, in this case I have a portrait that says 20% attack up. That 20% attack up is this blue number right here. Everything else goes into this white number, including the attack from this portrait. Now the reason why I'm specifically pointing out this specific thing right here at the very beginning of this video is because that is like already one of the most important things that you can like find out about how the damage calculation works. I'm going to tell you exactly why that is so important. So if you look at our character overview right here, we have our little Homura right there. So of course, if you take a look at Homura, we have the basic stats right here, HP, attack, defense, speed, all that kind of jazz. And you're now wondering, well, how can I get the most out of that? How can I get the most damage? So we're going to start off, of course, with attack. So right here we have the base attack of Homura. This is just her base attack at level 100 with these ascensions and this magic level right here. This is her base attack. Now you might be thinking, how does that base attack then translate into damage if I were to now hit the enemy? Right, but there must be some translation into how this number actually makes your damage go higher, right? And we thought maybe it's a one-to-one. Did some testing? No, it's not that. Maybe the attack number gets squared in some way, right? Also, it's not the case. In fact, base attack makes your damage scale really, really high. Like insanely high. With just a little bit more base attack, you suddenly gain an insane amount of more damage. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the mathematics behind it because there's a lot of different stuff that went into this. I even tried some linear regression, or rather polynomial regression at some point, and it didn't work out like at all. All of the results I got from that were kind of crap because it turns out the base attack value has some really weird exponent of like 2.7 or something attached to it, like some absolutely insane value. But what that really means for you, the player, who doesn't care about mathematics and who just want to do more damage, the point that I'm trying to make is increasing the base attack right here makes you do a lot more damage. I'm talking about a lot more damage. For example, let's say you add just 7% more attack. Just 7% more attack might translate into something absurd like 20% more damage, like something absolutely insane. So if we understand, okay, we need to increase this value right here, well, how do we do that? First off, leveling up. Of course, the higher you level up, the more this base value down here increases already. That's perfect. That gives you a lot of damage. Ascensions, of course, the 2% attack here from that, also really nice stuff that flows into these base values. Then we have, of course, the magic level. The magic level has nodes that increases attack right here. You can see at level 110 of this, you have 864 bonus attack that goes into the base attack. Awesome. You want to have that as well. What else can you get? Well, if you go to your party overview right here, you have the portrait. Now, if you have any portrait has, of course, stats onto it. These stats get added to your characters, including, of course, the attack. So this attack right here that it says, for example, for the Needle Witch portrait right here, you have 158 attack. That attack gets added to your base attack. So you want to have a portrait that has the highest base attack as possible. What else increases base attack? There's one other thing that increases base attack, and that's your support Kyoku. Now, if you haven't seen the system yet and you're freaking out right now, this system only unlocks after having beaten the main story on normal mode, which is Needle Witch. Needle Witch is the final witch on that. So once you've done that, this system unlocks where you can add a support Kyoku to a character, and you gain a percentage of their stats onto your stats. In this case, this stat value also increases with how many Puella Pictura rank you have, and I think the maximum is where I'm currently at, which is like 15%. Right? Yeah. No, it's actually 16% at rank 100. I'm 99 right now. So you get 16% of the character stats onto your other character. So if I were to now equip Felicia onto Homura, I'll be getting another 335 attack on top of that. So if I were to do that and say, okay, now I have this. If we now take a look at our Homura, we see that we have a crap ton of attack. Now this is a bit weird because you see another blue number and you maybe remember from earlier, oh, blue number means bonus attack. In this case, it's not. It's like in brackets. It's actually already rolled into this. It's kind of weird. I don't know. It's why the system is so weird. But yeah, so we have a really high base attack now from having the portrait, having base attack, from having our levels, our ascension, our magic level, our support Kyoku, all of that rolls into our base attack. And with a really high base attack, we do a lot of damage. Already, if we're maximizing what we can get from this, already we're doing an insane amount of damage. What other ways are there though of increasing damage? Well, we have the 20% attack up from this portrait right here. And as I showed you earlier in battle with the blue number that appears next to your attack, you might think, oh, if that blue number rolls into my base attack, that means it scales really well, right? Because attacks are supposed to scale really well. No, it doesn't. Because the super high scaling that I described is only for the base attack. Only the base attack has this insane 2.7 exponent scaling or whatever to it. But if you increase it by 20%, that's like a separate multiplier entirely, okay? So, let's say we start with basic attack. You create some damage out of that, and then that damage then gets multiplied with this right here, with 20% attack. So, a 20% attack up just means 20% more damage. It is just that simple, just 1-to-1, 20% more damage. If you have like 30% attack up, that's 30% more damage. It's just that straight onto that. So you don't have to think about how the attack actually calculates, how much base attack, how much bonus attack. It doesn't matter. You just look at the percentage, and that's your percent more damage. Awesome, simple. So you might then also ask, what about damage percentage, right? Let's say I have, for example, right here, 10% damage dealt up. In this case, with at least one debuff. Let's just say 10% damage up. Is that better or worse than 10% attack up? Well, it's the exact same. 10% damage up is the exact same as 10% attack up. It is literally the exact same. Now, of course, there are some diminishing returns. If you might think, for example, let's say you already have 200% bonus attack, and then you get another 20% bonus attack on top of that. Now you have 220% bonus attack. Well, that only increases your damage by like a little bit. Right, like relatively is only like 10% more damage almost. But if you have like 0% damage increase, and then you go from 0 to 20% damage increase, then you do get the full 20% damage increase, right? But once again, if you were to have like 200% damage increase, and then you go from 200% to 220%, that's not a big increase, right? That's only a small increase. Which also means that if possible, you want to have a lot of attack up percentage, and you want to have a lot of damage up percentage. Basic stuff. You probably remember this from other games as well, because basically every single RPG that has an attack up and damage up, you kind of want to have both. Where just having one of the two really high is not going to maximize the damage. To maximize the damage, you want to have both really high. And it really just comes down to, well, which one do you have better access to, and what do you need? Like if you already have a lot of attack up percentage, maybe now you want to actually add some more damage up percentage, because between the two, they're the same. Like 20% attack up is the same as 20% damage up. So you just try to get as much as of both as you can. That's literally it. What other ways are there of increasing your damage? Well, if we take a look at the stats of Homura in here, oh, we can crit. Awesome. You can look at the crit rate and the crit damage. How does that work? Crit damage is a completely separate multiplier that just multiplies onto the entire damage. So you calculate the entire damage, and then at the very end, you then see, did you crit? If yes, multiply the entire damage with the critical damage multiplier. And the base multiplier is only like 10%. Like this increases with magic level. Like on magic level, you have the ability to increase this a little. So if you go into magic level, yeah, you see plus 8% from magic level. But generally, every character starts with 10%, and enemies, by the way, they can crit you as well. They also crit for 10%. So you might think that in most games it's like double damage, or at least 50% more damage. In here, it's only 10% more damage. And even at maximum magic level, it's only 20% extra damage, which is basically nothing. That said, there are, of course, characters and effects that can increase crit damage, but just by itself, crit actually does very little. It's only a very tiny multiplier that goes at least gets multiplied to the entire damage that you deal at the very end. Okay, so that's another way at least of increasing your damage. Well, what about the percentage test right here? Well, the percentage test right here, like for example, deals 303% dark damage. That's just a straight multiplier to the entire damage. So once again, that's just a separate multiplier that multiplies the entire damage. It's not additive to anything else or anything like that. It's just you have the entire damage and then it's multiplied by this percentage right here. Very simple. Very, very simple. Which of course means that if you have an attack that deals 50% damage and then an attack that deals 100% damage, of course the attack that deals 100% damage does twice the damage. It is just that straightforward. There's nothing really much else to that. Okay, what about break bonus? Because if you break the enemies, of course you get break bonus, right? Once again, the break bonus is actually just a completely separate modifier that just multiplies the entire damage with whatever the break damage multiplier is. So if the break damage multiplier is like nothing, it's because the enemy isn't broken, or because you just broke the enemy and it's like 100% maybe, then you deal normal damage. And then if it goes to 400%, then you deal 4 times the damage. It is just that straightforward, really. Okay, what else do we have? Well, we had break damage, we have damage percent, we had crits, we had the numbers in these skills. Well, what about defense? That's like the last big bastion now that we're still wondering about. What about defense? So defense works a little bit differently. If we have, for example, a character that has a lot of defense right here, look, we have Sana right here, awesome, she has a lot of defense. You might then think about how does that actually reduce enemy damage? Because of course, defense reduces enemy damage. Let's say we have 2,922. For the sake of argument, let's say it's 3,000. Let's say we have 3,000 defense on our little Sana right here with her Voltic Thingness. There have been ideas maybe it gets subtracted from the damage somewhere, like somewhere in the calculation there's like a minus defense or something like that, because in Magi Record there was actually a term that was like attack minus 1/3 of defense or something like that, right? In which case a defense would like linearly get subtracted. However, we found out in this game that it's not a subtraction, it's a multiplication. Or to be more specific, it's a division, but so what does that actually mean for increasing damage? Let's say our little Sana right here with 3,000 defense gets hit by an attack. That attack dealt 500 damage to her, okay? Ouch, 500 damage, that hurts. But let's take our defense from 3,000 and we're going to increase it by double. We're going to double it to 6,000. Okay, so we're doing a ×2 to the defense. Well, how that actually impacts the damage, it now puts the damage to 1 over that number. So 1/2, which is at half. So if we double our defense, we take half damage. It is just a straight multiplication. Or in this case, division, but whatever. So double defense means half damage. If you were to then double your defense again from 6,000 to 12,000, well then it would cut the damage in half again. So for our 500 damage we took went down to 250. If we were to double our defense again, it goes down to 125, right? It is just really that simple and straightforward. That means it's really nice for tanks to have a lot of defense. They're going to take a lot less damage, awesome. But more importantly, if we want to increase our own damage against the enemy, we have characters that can shred enemy defense. We have, for example, our Ren right here, who has skills that reduce enemy defense right here, decreases their defense by 10% for 2 turns in this case, for example. Now, if we were to say, for example, together with her follow-up attacks, which also decrease defense, we're going to stack that up and we're going to decrease the enemy defense by a grand total of 30%. If we then do the maths, so 30%, that's 0.7, so it's actually, the damage gets set to 1 over 0.7, blah, blah, mathematics, blah, blah. And then we figure out, 1 over 0.7, that's 42%. Oh, which turns out means if the enemy's defense has been reduced by 30%, we do 42% more damage. If we reduce the enemy's defense by 50%, we deal 100% more damage. That's double damage. So it actually scales really, really well, it seems. So defense shred is actually pretty darn powerful, right? Shredding defense by 30% means 42% more bonus damage. If you shred it even more, it goes higher and higher. That's really, really good. What about the increases target's damage taken though? Well, as far as we know currently, that is just basically a damage multiplier for yourself. So you yourself saying, I deal 33% bonus damage, seems to be the exact same as saying the enemy takes 33% bonus damage. It seems to be the same. We're not 100% certain about this one because this is the one part of the calculation that we're not quite sure about. But it seems to basically act as if you just had a damage multiplier when you attack an enemy like this. So it's not quite as powerful as defense shred, meaning that 30% defense shred would be more powerful than just increased damage taken by 30%. Right? Keep that in mind. So if we now zoom out again and we just take a look at everything there is to increase the damage. I'm going to rattle it all off right here. First off, base attack, which is the white attack number in your base that you increase with level, ascension, magic level, support Kyoku, and your portrait base attack. All of that increases damage by an absolute crap ton. You need to maximize this number as best as you can in order to deal the most amount of damage possible. That's your number one priority. But there's not that many ways of increasing it too far, because the ways of increasing it are quite limited, and at some point you're done with the level, you're done with ascension, you're done with magic level, etc. Next up, attack percentage, which is just a straight damage multiplier to the damage. Damage percent, which is just another straight damage multiplier to the damage. The break percent, which is another straight multiplier to the damage. Crit damage percent when you crit, another straight multiplier to the damage. The character skill description percentage right here, yet another just straight multiplier to the entire damage. And then of course the multiplier that arrives from defense reduction. It's also just another straight multiplier, but that one is actually a little bit more powerful than it might look on paper. And that is all the ways that you can increase damage in this game. And because all of these different sources of damage increase are all multiplicative with each other, you want to have a little bit of everything. You want attack percent, you want damage percent, you want defense reduction, you want to be in break with the enemy, you want to crit, you want to have skills with really high damage, you want all of that coming together at once to deal the most amount of damage possible, and if possible you do so on a character that has really high base damage. And that is how you maximize the damage in this game. So yeah, that was that. I hope you guys enjoyed this and learned something from this. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and I'll see you guys next time.